voice. I am your voice.
Hello everybody and welcome back to another live stream. Make sure you guys like the stream down below. Let's hit 100 likes before that camera goes on, and make sure you guys subscribe to the channel if you are new. We do have a lot to get to tonight. We'll mainly be getting to the super chats. I don't have some long-winded monologue about the DNC if that's what you're looking for, but we are going to discuss it to a large degree. But first and foremost, I'd like to touch base on some of what we're seeing here out of the Florida primary as well, because Democrats in Florida, they're cooked, they're destroyed, they're done. So here we are, we're back, the camera's on, and Florida had their primary today for their down ballot races, and Democrats, 2022 was bad enough for them in the primary. 2024, it just got a lot worse, and you can look at the results here. Miami-Dade County, if you look at the Democrats combined, if we could pull these up, but I guess because the window on the screen is smaller, but I actually have it somewhere. I have it on X. You can see it right here. Republicans with 112,550 votes. And then look at the Democrats. Democrats with 112,387 votes. So Republicans outvoted Democrats in Miami-Dade County for the first time in, I guess, a very, very long time at a minimum. I don't even know. But you talk about Florida, it's a red state now. Democrats, I really hope they spend money on Florida. I hope they try to win Florida because all their efforts just fall on their face for some reason. This is the state that they just can't touch. They just can't touch Florida. And I don't even know if they're going to be able to win at this point unless something changes in their favor, because we see the polls, Harris is up. We look into the polls, a lot of response bias in the polling. You see who's answering the polls now compared to who is not answering the polls. It's a big, big shift in such a little brief period of time. And we're polling as well. We released a national poll, but even then it was a lot of response bias that we discovered. You don't usually see all this stuff when people see polling, but when we were, in the field, you'd get these responses like lightning fast from a lot of people, most of them leaning Democrat, and the results and the crosstabs are inexplicable when you kind of try to weigh for everything, because you can try, doesn't matter. But either way, if you guys want to donate to the polling fund, we've raised $5,600. The link is in the top of the description down below, or you could support the channel via super chat or whatever. But either way, the betting markets are not reacting well to this convention. And like I said going in, if this convention is just all about either abortion, which polled as our, I think, fifth or sixth biggest issue in the polling, as the number one issue is in the single digits, middle single digits, not exactly even close to where it was in 2022, let alone where it is now. But also when you look into the just convention, if it was all going to be a festival of abortion, a festival of Trump bad, Trump bad, Trump bad, which is basically what people have heard for how many years on in from the mainstream media, how exactly is this going to move the needle? Obviously, Democrats can watch it. They can self-fillet themselves. They can kind of get this red meat. But how does the average voter who's actually swayable look at this and say, I want to vote for them? Because the Republican National Convention was different. And you had a lot of talk about the economy. You had a lot of talk about, the border. Obviously, they were attacking Biden, but they were attacking his policies. They weren't attacking him necessarily personally. They were attacking his policies. And that kind of made sense. And they attacked Kamala Harris as well. They attacked the policies of the Biden-Harris administration, but they also did what they could do to humanize Trump. And, Kamala Harris had more mentions of her name tonight, and that's true. But it was kind of in this like little woke tone. That's kind of how they were working it in. Oh, she's a woman. She faced obstacles. Woman of color this, woman of color that. You see it unfold like that. It's a major, major problem for the Democrats, and they're falling in the betting odds partially as a result. I think part of it is because RFK Jr., very likely to drop out at this point. We have a video that'll be released tomorrow morning on this channel. It's already scheduled. But you look at RFK Jr. possibly dropping out. Will it, help Trump a lot with that endorsement? I don't know by how much, but even if it's 5%. That is a massive, massive number because, even as Democrats have said in this convention, it's going to be decided in a very tight race. And it's true. This is going to be a very close race no matter what. It's going to be decided across 7 states. I think it's going to be decided in favor of Trump as things stand today in probably about 5 or 6 of those 7 states. But you look at the betting markets now, betting markets not definitive, not necessarily a barometer of anything other than what people are seeing. But if you're in the middle of a convention where usually you get a convention bump and people are hitting that sell, sell, sell button and they're buying in favor of Donald Trump, I don't know how you could spin that to be a positive public reaction because there really isn't. You have a lot of astroturfed energy. You obviously do for this campaign. You're seeing it unfold. You're seeing the media try and gas up Kamala Harris after they've even lit into her over the past couple of months. And maybe they're not going to be as favorable at this point because they're getting frustrated. They understand that, they're trying to push her in the right direction about talking to the media and about, this whole stuff about price controls. But I don't even know if that's really going to move the needle in Kamala Harris's favor because I don't know how she can really come back from that. Even if she's like, oh, I was just kidding about this policy proposal. It's like, okay, well then how exactly does this make you somebody that's fit to serve if you throw out these childish policy proposals that a 5-year-old you would think would come up with? And it's just economic illiteracy, and it's failed every single time that it's been tried in every single country it's been tried in. It's a major, major issue, and people see it. Not a lot of substance, a lot of hot air. Bernie Sanders doing the Bernie Sanders thing. Oh, we need an economy that's fair for all Americans or whatever. And it's like the same old stuff. Like, where is it at? Where exactly is that vision? Because you don't get to have that moral high ground, or at least you don't get to punch up at Trump when you're the ruling party in power and you're like, I'm going to change everything. That message does not work out. You could say Kamala's not Biden. Okay, that's true. Kamala Harris is not Joe Biden, but still, she's the second in command. If John McCain couldn't run from George W. Bush's failures as a president, how on earth is Kamala Harris, who's the second in command, going to be able to run effectively from the record of the presidency of Joe Biden? I just cannot see a universe where that's going to, play out too well. I just can't see it. I don't think anybody else can see it if they're going to be being honest with themselves. I really just can't. And this is partially why I don't think you're going to get a DNC bump. You might get more response bias, but I don't even know how much more response bias you can get at this point when we're conducting the poll. D+17 sample for the first 500 individuals. Are we going to start seeing unweighted samples that are like D+25? It's ridiculous. Of course not. I don't believe you're going to be able to really see it. So I wouldn't be shocked if Harris just either stabilizes in the polls for a week or even if she slips. Now, we'll see what happens for sure. We'll see what happens. It's not a done deal. It's not over. In terms of the convention, things could really turn around. But, their night one viewership was high, partially because the president was speaking, giving his farewell address. Everyone's hyping it up, and they dragged the thing on for hours and hours on end. It's after midnight on the East Coast. We've only been streaming for about, 10 minutes or so. So you kind of see that dynamic there with just what's going on in this convention. They're not really organized. The RNC was relatively organized. Whether people thought it was perfect or not, I think it was very well organized. There was very little drama, especially compared to 2016. There was a lot of drama. Trump's speech was far, more impactful, I believe, in his 2016 RNC. His 2024 RNC speech was good, better than I think a lot of people gave him credit for, but it wasn't exactly like an earth-shattering form of an RNC speech either. I feel like, you leave a little bit off the table, but still net positive, right? It helped. But you didn't see a big RNC bump for Trump because the spotlight was stolen from him because you had Biden just decide to drop out a couple days after the RNC ended, which definitely shook up the race quite a bit. And we saw that play out. And then you had the past month of the media just fawning over Kamala Harris. And of course, it's the honeymoon period. And is this going to be enough to keep that honeymoon period afloat when you just have these same old, worn out, tired politicians going out there? Some of them don't even look like they want to be there compared to past conventions that they've spoken at. giving speeches about Trump bad, Obama going out there saying Trump is bad, Michelle Obama, pretending to like Kamala Harris. How many times have we seen this movie play out before? Obama definitely didn't even want Kamala to be the nominee. We know that. He wanted Biden to step down. He basically forced his friend out of there, supposed friend, and for the sake of democracy, cooed the president, who was rightfully elected by the people, had all the delegates, but they wanted they would make things worse for him if he was not willing to just step down. He was upset about it. And of course, he goes up there last night, gives a 50-minute, again, drug-fueled speech. Where were those drugs in the debate? I don't know. Or maybe just when he's on teleprompter, he acts differently. That's probably it. He can feed off of the crowd a little bit. And of course, debates don't have any crowd. Or maybe they gave him the wrong mixture ahead of the debate. I don't know. Maybe it was intentional. Maybe they did want him to get out of there. Maybe Harris was, but I don't know. There's so many different moving parts here. It's really hard to determine what happened. But we do know that they got rid of Biden for one reason, because he could not beat Donald Trump. He can't beat Trump. They know it. And as a result, well, what's going on right now? You see what's happening. They're propping up Kamala, but past a certain point, things that are fake, they fizzle out. Are we going to see a convention bump? I don't even know. And even if we do, what percentage of that is response bias, which usually it is. Most convention bumps are also driven by response bias. Even 2016 for the Republicans and the Democrats, going back 2012, we've seen it time and time again. But we've seen this like tenured response bias. And a lot of pollsters, even pollsters that don't exactly lean right, are saying, if things don't change, we could really be in for like a massive polling miss, even bigger than 2020, in favor of Donald Trump based off of some of the underlying data. And even the Kamala Harris super PACs are saying it. David Axelrod is saying it. So many people are saying it. It's not just me. It's not just copium. There's legitimate systematic problems with polling that did not persist 3 weeks ago. And you can sit there and say, well, you're just coping, this, that, and the other thing. But these are systematic problems that did persist in previous election cycles, and they were proven wrong. And are we possibly seeing them again? Yes, especially because Trump is on the ballot. Trump is that unique factor. And he brings out voters at the polls just typically don't end up reaching. And now Democrats want to answer polls. Republicans, or, even if they're at baseline, you're kind of seeing it seep into the sample, and waiting kind of gets a little hectic. But some of the polls that have been accurate despite response biases in other polls, well, Roanoke College in Virginia, Trump's only down 3 in Virginia to Kamala Harris. If he's down 3 in Virginia, how the hell is he losing North Carolina? How the hell is North Carolina even going to be, within 2 points the other way if Trump has got Virginia within 3? We understand how these things work. So just is typical stuff that we see. There's a lot going on in the polling, a lot of it's noise, and we will continue to monitor that situation. But the betting markets, this is a little bit more interesting, because usually people, if they were thrilled, they'd be betting, including Democrats. But you don't see a lot of people putting their money where their mouth is during this sort of thing. Even though Kamala Harris, like a week ago, was up by like 10, Donald Trump has taken the lead back, and he's led how many polls in a row in Pennsylvania? And that's the other thing. People are saying, well, people are coping about the polls on the right. Well, the polls still have Trump winning. So how exactly are they coping about the polls when the polls in Pennsylvania have Trump leading? The polls in Georgia have Trump leading. The polls in North Carolina on aggregate have Trump leading. The polls in Arizona have Trump leading. The polls in Nevada have Trump leading. The polls in Wisconsin don't have Trump leading. But again, I feel like you're coping if you say there's going to be zero polling error, that would have benefited Republicans at the end of the day in terms of the actual count. So whatever, it is what it is. We'll get to super chats. We got a lot to talk about. I'd like to hear your guys' takeaways of the convention, takeaways of current polling, takeaways of other stuff that's going on right now in our country as it stands today. You have jobs reports. They may have to do a massive revision down 1 million. Oh, that's brutal. We'll see what happens. But I don't know. Johnny Heartdog says, what do you think the possibility of RFK dropping out and endorsing Trump is? Do you think it'll happen? And if so, it'll move the needle. I say 75% after what Nicole Shanahan said on that podcast, because, I would have said probably like 30% before I heard that. When I heard that, it's like, no, she's giving it away. They don't want Harris to win. There's no path to 5%. There isn't. We talk about this tomorrow morning in the video that'll be released, probably sometime when I'm sleeping. But let's see. Also, for 10, Johnny Hartdog says, I think Trump should campaign very heavily, mostly in Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. He's already got Arizona and Nevada. Maybe a few rallies in those 2 states, but he should camp out in the other 3. I don't think you should take Arizona or Nevada for granted, although Nevada's not top priority because it's only 6 electoral votes. There's very few paths to the White House that are going to include the state of Nevada. But I do think Donald Trump is going to win it. But I don't think that even Arizona or Nevada should be taken for granted. Also, I'm not paying attention to any polls until early September. I think they'll steady out and be more consistent then after all the hype is over. Possibly. It's possible. Citrus Peppercorn says, how will RFK endorsing Trump affect the polls? I think 75% of his 4% goes to Trump. Well, here's what it would do. And the question is, will he stay on the ballot? Will he not be on the ballot? Who knows what's going to happen? Some people will say it's better that he's on because the people that don't like Trump but won't vote for either candidate would be more likely to vote for him than vote for somebody like Harris. I'm not entirely sure. But one thing I do know is that I think that in terms of the polling, the third-party vote share is always overestimated. How many of those voters are ideologically voting for RFK because they like RFK? I think he gets like maybe 1%, 1.5% at most at the end of the day, which is much lower than his 4% in the polling. So again, I'd say Trump might gain in the polls, like maybe a point or so out of that. The rest might go to undecided. They might even just say they're not voting, or they'll write in RFK, or they'll vote for some other third-party candidate. I think that maybe the libertarian candidate, who's a super far leftist kind of guy, he's not, nearly conservative, leaning libertarian. Like, he's not even like Gary Johnson, who was very liberal. And definitely took, in my opinion, looking at the election now and the data now, took more votes away from Hillary than a lot of people think, because a lot of his voters went to Biden. Some places they did go to Trump, like in Idaho maybe, but not in the states that actually mattered. Up next, 84Z28 Bear says Harry and Chris have monkeypox. Oh, allegedly, it's possible. It would not surprise me one bit. Luke Newman says, very good impression of Crazy Bernie. Yeah, I haven't done impressions in a while on the channel, but I didn't plan on doing that. I just started saying something about the millionaires and billionaires, and it just came out that way. It just felt more natural because that's just how he does it. I mean, the guy he's been old forever, but they put him out there. He again, this is somebody who is praised regimes in, he praised the USSR, he's praised Cuba, he's praised all these things. Honestly, I hope he hits the campaign trail with Kamala Harris. I really hope he does. I mean, she has taken all of his policies on the economy that are unpopular. She's taken advice for the running mate that she was supposed to select. So, I mean, yeah, well, we'll see. Also, 84Z Bear says Anna Navarro says that she used to be a Republican. Well, did she even speak today? I think that she's doing day 4. But that's the problem. You're not a Republican or conservative if you support Kamala Harris. I don't understand where these people are coming from. There's nothing conservative about her policy. You can't even make a case for it. I'll vote Kamala than red down ballot because the president has been, dealing with a Republican Congress, and you see the rates of immigration. It's super high. You see what's going on. There's no such thing as a Republican for Kamala Harris or a conservative for Kamala Harris. You're a deranged TDS patient for Kamala Harris who should check themselves into a mental institution. That's pretty much it. So you have all these people that happen to claim to be conservative or claim to be Republican. They're not conservative or Republican. A lot of them have never voted for Trump. Even if they try to claim they voted for Trump, they never voted for Trump. Anna Navarro was supporting Hillary Clinton on CNN, in the 2016 general election. It's not exactly like, having the endorsement of somebody new and saying, why is Harris going to do something for Republicans? She supports socialized health care. She supports a mandatory gun buyback program. She supports the crazy Green New Deal. There's nothing even remotely moderate about Kamala Harris. There's not at all. Even when she's trying to moderate her current campaign, it's still calling for Soviet-style price controls and talking about the fact that corporate greed is the real cause of inflation. That's not the cause of inflation when corporate profits are at a very, very, very low point for a lot of these places, a lot of these grocery stores. Kroger, for example, I'm sure Meijer is very low. A lot of these grocery stores are not having high profit margins. Why do you think the prices are going up? Grocery stores should want the prices to be as low as possible so they can get people in the store to have a profit. I feel like the grocery store that would have the prices down a point or two lower than the others are the ones making the most money. It's probably the most greedy corporation by that logic. So no, these people don't understand economics. It's not corporate greed, and I'm not a big fan of a lot of these mega corporations either for one reason or another, but these left-wing economic policies not exactly going to solve the problem. They're not. Let's see what we got in the super chat docket. Our dog show says, didn't you have a video suggesting Nebraska could go to a winner-take-all system? Any chance that happens? Well, they shot down the bill, so the answer is no. Nasty Mandy says, what happened? How did the DNC backfire like this? Well, not a lot happened. It's just the fact that they're not really bringing something to the table that's going to sway voters. Oh, Trump is bad. Trump is evil. Well, how many times have people heard that before? Oh, the lies about Trump in Charlottesville again. The lies about Trump told people to drink bleach again. The lies about Trump. People know that these things are lies at this point. Either that or you're not swaying voters. Stupid people believe these lies. Stupid people. This is the party of supposed intellectualism and being smart and, education or whatever. They're not. They're not. It's ironic because you have a lot of people that are like, supposedly the college-educated voters. Those are the people that are leaving the Republicans for these people. I don't understand what's going through their heads. But honestly, a lot of them are not. It's a generational shift. There's many reasons for it. But younger voters, I feel like there's going to be some sort of a corner turned, at least with young men. Young women, maybe not as much, but they were already voting Democrat at ridiculous rates anyways. Yes, man, for 10 says, are you team cameraman or teams? I don't know the brain rot stuff. I can't comment on that. Dova Budgie says, how do I get front row seats at Trump rallies? Show up early. That's the only way. Lovely Six says, or unless you're talking about like the VIP seats in the background, because I think you have to be like a VIP. I don't even know how to get back there. Lovely Six says, how can we collectively get Trump to do the Fox debate next to an empty podium? How is no one in his team suggesting this? It would embarrass Harris. Well, he might. He might do that. I mean, you have a couple of weeks before people decide, and there is a lot of pressure from a lot of people to get him to do that. I don't necessarily think that he's like not going to do that. I feel like he probably will have some empty podium there. Jonathan Manson says no one has been convicted of a crime or sentenced on the Republican side. This case is still in consideration. The only one convicted was Walz. Yeah, that's kind of the thing. You talk about Walz. Walz is somebody that was driving 99 in like a 55. He could have killed somebody, and it is what it is. I'm not going to say that that's a legitimate knock on the ticket. If J.D. Vance did the same thing, I would not hold it against him. Vance has definitely changed and grown a lot. The only difference is with Walz is he's just a liar. He's lied. He lied about his wife going on IVF. He lied about going to Afghanistan. He lied about carrying guns in what was presumed to be combat. It's stolen valor. They'll say it's not stolen valor. Oh, he just misspoke. But if you don't get that call going the other way, and everybody knows you don't get that call going the other way. So, exactly. But in terms of Trump being convicted, I think that's arguably the biggest argument in favor of voting for him. The system's trying to take this guy down. They're trying to hit him with nonsense. They're trying to throw him in jail. Are you going to allow the system to do that to somebody just because they happen to break the mold politically? Would not have been, no case like this has ever been brought against pretty much anybody in this manner. All these other cases, the civil cases, ridiculous record fines for certain things that we see. If this was any other non-MAGA Republican, if this was a Democrat. No, obviously we see what happens to a lot of those people, but Trump, for minuscule things, they're trying to throw him behind bars. I think it shows who the threat to the system is, and it's Donald Trump. Luke Newman says, I don't know how LTE passed you in subs all of a sudden. Well, because the Democrats have the energy of, oh, well, we're gaining in polls. So you can put out 3 videos a day saying, we gained in this poll. They'll never tell you why they gained in the poll. They'll never tell you about response bias. They'll never tell you about a lot of these certain things. They'll never want to debate, especially if they're, paid or they work for the current administration in some way, shape, or form, and model t-shirts on their website for merchandise. So, it kind of is what it is. Of course, there's going to be a little give and take, but if Donald Trump wins, I feel like it's going to be a big, massive, I guess you would just say, influx that we're going to get of people. So we'll see. It's just the momentum shift. We'll get it back. But make sure you guys do like and subscribe regardless. Sam Madsen says, I heard a rumor that Sells are sitting on a Trump plus 19 Iowa poll. If true, Wisconsin's going red easily and Minnesota is competitive. Oh, I don't doubt that Trump's going to gain in Iowa. I don't know if he's going to be up by 19, but that Iowa, the fair poll, the straw poll, that was insane. Now, if you talk about 2020 in Iowa, did they have Seltzer polls before the final poll? I don't even know. I guess I could look at this Des Moines Register. It seems like they had Trump up by 7, so they did underestimate him. But, back in what looked to be September, they had him tied. So, again, it's not entirely perfect in terms of their polls that are going to be months out, but their final poll is usually dead on accurate. It's been for several cycles now. But if Trump, even if he gets Iowa by 12, 13, yeah, he's going to get Wisconsin more likely than not, especially the way trends are kind of moving in those 2 states. Let's see. John Waffle says the Pennsylvania voting situation conserving. We need to vote early and combat the. Well, what fraud is happening? Because what I did see is that Democrat requests for mail-in ballots are much lower than they were at this point in 2020 in a couple counties, which I don't know if that's true, but I don't know what you mean by stuff going on in Pennsylvania. So if you'd like to clarify, be my guest, but I didn't see anything happening. Dupweb says, do we even want RFK in our coalition? Well, the answer is yes, because if he tells his supporters, which probably are over 1 million people in the electorate, probably 2 million people, to vote for Trump, and you only get 2% of those people on board, that's still a lot of people. You want as much help as you can get. And if he wants to have some remedial role in the administration, I think it's a very good thing for him to do that, for not just him, but for Trump as well. It's called making a deal with the guy who wrote Art of the Deal. So why not get it done? Let's see. Ash K2 says the number of Harris Republicans are increasing. Earlier today, CNN interviewed a former MAGA supporter. Then Kellyanne Conway's daughter endorsed Harris. This is concerning. Should we change course? Well, I think if you're concerned about CNN cooking their panels, cooking their interviews, there was a panel on CNN in 2019 where they said, we're interviewing Trump supporters. And 3 of the people did not support Trump. So did Trump lose half his support in his second election? No, he actually added 11 million new voters to his coalition. Very few voters flipped from Donald Trump to Joe Biden. There were a lot of voters who also, on the other hand, did flip from Clinton to Donald Trump, mainly in Hispanic areas and such. But it comes down to turnout. It comes down to several things. I'm not concerned about Harris Republicans. I feel like there's going to be less of them than there were Biden Republicans in 2020. Kellyanne Conway's daughter has never been a Trump supporter. Kellyanne Conway's husband was in 2016, or at least he pretended to be, and then he founded the Lincoln Project. These are not people that are even remotely conservative, remotely Republican. They don't have much sway in the electorate. This is the equivalent of, actually, it's less frequent than, black voters leaving the Democrat Party, because you see all this hype that Republicans every cycle, we're going to get 20% of the black vote, and they stay at 10. But that's been increasing more than the share of Republicans that has been, bleeding from the Republicans during Trump's administration, percentage-wise. So, again, it's all fake. It's fake hype. Now, some people will, but those are the people that were going to vote for Biden. You have the TDS patients, but you're not going to get a lot of new Republicans that are supporting Harris. What is Harris even offering them? It's all fake. Like the one guy they had a guy speak at the convention tonight who's a loser from Twitter. who constantly gets in arguments with people and then loses and embarrasses himself and says, I'm a Reagan Republican. I'm voting for Biden. Now he's voting for Kamala Harris. And Reagan would not support literal price controls. You think Reagan is going to support Soviet-style economic policies? You think so? I'm not even the biggest fan of Reagan, but you talk about peace through strength and that doctrine that Trump has on foreign policy. This is the main thing that they're citing. Trump is a threat to national security. How? Everything was peaceful when he was president. You had conflicts de-escalating. Now you have the opposite. I feel like, if anything, we need Trump back in the White House now because of that. But these people are dumb. They're dumb. They're dumb, or they're paid off, or both, or they're grifting, and I don't know. LinRx 52 for $50. That's the largest super chat of the night. Says, does a Dem response bias at this point translate into better voter turnout for Dems than ours? Interested to hear your take on the effect of an RFK Jr. potential dropout. Thanks for going live tonight. Helps get rid of the Obama stench. Well, I'll say that in terms of the response bias is that, yes, it could mean that Democrats are more enthused. I don't think there's any denial that Democrats are more enthused. But an enthusiastic vote does also equate to a non-enthusiastic vote. And this is something people need to understand. When they ask Democrats, how likely are you to vote? That percentage has not really risen. The Republican percentage has risen. So it kind of does beg the question of enthusiasm getting into the sample. It doesn't mean that that's going to be reflective of the entire electorate, especially because those lower propensity voters, they used to be Democrat. That's why the polls underestimated Obama. Now it's been flipped. The polls have underestimated Trump, when these lower propensity voters come out. And I think that this cycle, you're probably going to see the polling underestimate Trump again. I've really refused to hear. I have not heard an argument that has been effective in terms of combating this. The only thing I've heard is, well, what about 2022, which you can't really compare midterm years to presidential years. 2018, the polls in Wisconsin were kind of accurate, overestimated, if anything, the Republicans. Now in Wisconsin, there's a greater chance than not the polls are underestimating Donald Trump once again, just as they did in 2020. So you see this pattern, this cyclical pattern. But even comparing the polls now to the polls in August in 2022, Republicans are still in a much better position than they were back then. At least Donald Trump is. And these other down-ballot Republicans, maybe not as much. But again, ticket splitting, I'm not worried about that at the end of the day. As for the RFK Jr. dropout, I've covered it already, but I'll say it again. I feel like it might help Trump a point something of a percent, but that could be crucial. Every little bit that Trump is adding to his column is going to help him win. And leaving no stone unturned has kind of been what he's doing this cycle, rallying in the Bronx, getting media coverage off of that, going to all these places that Republicans usually don't go to. The Libertarian Convention, the Bitcoin stuff, all these podcasts, really chasing a lot of these millennials, possibly wanting to pick up some of their votes this cycle because they're hit hard with the economy, and he's just showcasing himself unfiltered to a lot of these people. That's the Donald Trump that typically, ends up gaining support on net. That's what he's really been focusing on doing, which I feel like is smart. Real Texan Politics is unsurprisingly deranged simp Chris Nelson has abandoned RFK Jr. and now supports Kamala Harris. Well, I think that he's found his candidate that represents his interests the best. So, he's one of those white dudes for Harris, soy boy type of guys. So, welcome to that side. You belong on that side of the line anyways. It's kind of addition by subtraction in terms of that. So let him do that. Stephen Z, thank you for the 2. Patriot345 says, all I've seen and heard from the DNC is bash Trump and abortion. That's all they can run on, which is why I don't think that it's insane to say they're not going to get a convention bump, because they kind of already are having their convention bump. Maybe it gets bigger, but so far haven't quite seen any evidence of Harris just in this like bullet train momentum style If anything, she's being forced to talk. And I think her speech is probably going to be okay. They're going to hype it up. They're going to hype it up to be better than it really was. I'm not going to say her speech is going to suck. I don't think Obama's speech sucked by their standards. But again, is it really something that's going to move the needle? Obama nostalgia is not what it even was 4 years ago, let alone 8 years ago. So, let him keep yapping. Let him keep yapping, and we'll see where it leads him. We'll see. Hamster Eater 96 is good news. Several anti-school choice quote unquote Republicans lost their primary badly to real conservatives out in Wyoming. The tide is shifting. Yeah, let's check this. Let's check Wyoming. Okay, really, John Barrasso facing some opposition. That's good to see, actually. Good to see. Harriet Hageman, yeah, she won easily. That's good. But this is where it starts. These red states, Democrats and their mega donors, they buy controlled opposition. There's a reason why swing state candidates, in the midterms ended up being more of the, right-leaning or conservative in many cases than these deep red states where, the parties are more ingrained. And there should be a lot of convention nominating systems up in these places. You look at Utah especially. Utah's a massive disaster. Utah's a big disgrace. So, let's see. Anastasios 0513 says orthodoxy or death for 2. Bunch of Greek lettering. Thank you for the super chat. Dova Budgie 100 says I was at Wilkes-Barre too. The speech was A tier, but so many people left before it was over. Had me pissed. Honestly, didn't happen at the last 2. Well, I don't know why that was. People are like, it's happened before at rallies where people are leaving before it ends, and people are saying it's because they're abandoning Trump. But in reality, people wait in line for hours to get into these arenas. And, if they happen to leave early, I've left Trump rallies early. It was an outdoor rally. There was like 100,000 people there. This was in like 2022, early 2022 in Texas, when he was there before the Texas primary in Conroe. But, we left early. But that was still a little bit different. But you have the guy out there talking for 90 minutes on end. Yeah, last 20 minutes, some people are going to have to go home. They want to beat the traffic. There's one thing or another they're trying to get out of there for. It's not because they don't like what Donald Trump's saying. He does speak for a long time. I mean, that's kind of, if anything, an issue. But sometimes people got to get home. I Am Charles says, do you think they will make Kamala president before the election by forcing Joe to resign? And how devastating will this be to Trump winning? Well, I mean, if they really try that, they're going to lose their whole first woman president card, first minority female president card. I don't believe they're going to do that. I really don't believe that they're going to do it. Maybe like a Hail Mary to shake things up, but I feel like they're confident that they might have a shot to the point where I don't think they're going to force Joe to resign. I don't know how it would impact the election at all. I'm sure Alan Lichtman will say something about the incumbency key, like that actually matters. But in this case, having that incumbency probably hurts more than it helps. Heizi's Noom for 3, thank you. Based Cat says, I think the Florida Democrats went into disarray starting when DeSantis beat Andrew Gillum in 2018. He later found OD. Well, he didn't die, but he was found in a drug state in a hotel doing very sussy stuff with other guys. But yeah, no, that election killed them in Florida, the Democrats. They're never able to come back from that. But it wasn't even just that. The fact that, Gillum, he raised all this money. They ran a campaign with all these people and falling short and having an incumbent senator in a swing state in a blue wave year lose. The Florida Democrat apparatus was weakening a little bit before them, but that was kind of like the dagger. And then Trump's win was another dagger, and then COVID, and you have all these conservatives moving there. That's also a dagger. And the fact that they run a tight ship in the Florida GOP, they've basically boxed the Democrats out of power, made them fight each other, go broke. They become a disaster. Their voter registration advantage, it's down 1 million on net. It's a mess for the Florida Democrats. They are done. They're done for a long, long time. Joe Schmo says it's beyond the pale how the liberals keep touting Trump as a guarantee of starting political violence, even though he got shot in the head a month ago. Well, they will, yeah, they've kind of eased off on the whole democracy stuff as much. because I feel like part of it is because they know it's a losing argument with Harris not even being democratically elected, being coronated by people who were unelected, given the fact that she was, again, not very popular. Of course, these people fall in line every single time. It's what they do. But still, apex caliber. So should Trump campaign in southeastern Pennsylvania and northern Virginia to boost his numbers in both states at once, paper ballots and clean voter rolls in Virginia? Well, that's good. But again, keep in mind, that's not entirely going to, be enough. Paper ballots, versus machines or whatever. The number one concern for election shenanigans in 2020 was not what a lot of people think it was. It was not machines. That's the scapegoat. I don't like the machines. I want paper ballots. But it was certain precincts with very large places of people who were in nursing homes and other instances where you had a lot of irregularities take place across Wisconsin, Arizona, etc. Now, the good thing for Georgia changing their system is because now that Georgia's changed, it's going to make it harder for Arizona, which they've changed a little bit of their system. It's going to make it harder to justify it because the irregularities are going to grow substantially in size, even over what they were at in 2020. But I don't think that he needs to campaign in Virginia a whole lot right now. I think that there's other states that are higher priority. Virginia's a long shot. I know what the poll said for Roanoke, but let's shore up the states we need to first. If we can go back and get Virginia or win it on a fluke, how we got Wisconsin in 2016, or even how we almost got Minnesota in 2016, let's do it. But as of right now, I'm kind of saying that we should, ease off of Virginia. Go back into North Carolina, maybe North Carolina in the north by Virginia. Certain parts of Pennsylvania aren't a far drive from Nova as well. So keep that in mind as well. But Jay Jazz says Bill O'Reilly says Trump is currently losing, and anyone saying otherwise is lying. What exactly is going on? He's pretty credible with inside information. Well, I mean, he's probably just looking at the polling. But does he know everything about the polls? Does he know what's going on? Has he conducted a poll himself, been on the other side of it and seen what's happened, before the Harris drop-off in terms of who's answering versus after the Harris drop-off and who's answering? So, again, I think that people need to mobilize this election cycle. I think that pretending like it's a done deal is stupid and it's going to only lead to downfall. But on the other hand, the doomerism or the panic, it's not entirely justifiable either. And there's a lot of things we can do. If you live in Pennsylvania, phase.com, there's Early Vote Action, there's Turning Point Action, their app. People can phone bank off of their volunteer. There's something out of Michigan I found. What's it called? 10xvotes.com for Michigan. If you live in Michigan, 10x Votes. If you live in Pennsylvania, PA Chase. There's so many things, but people are saying in chat that Bill does this every election. It would not surprise me. It's kind of like how every election cycle, Michael Moore says that the Republicans are going to win, and they did in 2016. But, he's a doomer. Bill O'Reilly might be a doomer for the Republican side, whatever, is what it is. But let's see. We got more super chats here. But do we have results out of Alaska? This is like the one state, okay, nothing out of Alaska. We're live past midnight on the East Coast, and the polls haven't even closed in Alaska. This is an underrated primary. We'll see what happens, but, it is just round one. But we will see if Peltola is able to crack 50, because if she is, that's bad news for Republicans. It's obviously a top 4 primary. And that's the main issue. It's not even ranked choice voting that's Alaska's problem. It's that when you pin Republican against Republican, like we saw in 2022, that becomes the problem. It's not a head-to-head race, because if it's a head-to-head race, it's entirely different. But if you have Republican versus Democrat, that's the problem. You have Democrats voting for Lisa Murkowski in the ranked choice voting, number 2, for one reason or another. Can't have that happen. And primaries you should be able to primary out Murkowski. But this system was put in place to protect her, and then they sent her millions of dollars so she would survive instead of helping Adam Laxalt or Herschel Walker or some of these other candidates. The GOP in the Senate should have been ashamed of themselves for how they handled 2022 on numerous fronts. Luke Newman says, if Harris wins, I'm packing my bags to New Zealand. Well, it's not going to do America any favors, but you can't blame the sentiment. John Waffle says they will hold several crucial counties in southeastern Pennsylvania for days. Well, that's what they've been doing. We just have to outvote it. I mean, we've seen this before. We saw it in 2022 Pennsylvania. It took a while to count the ballots, and they're trying to extend it in certain places, and this is just a problem. They're going to have to do what they can to fight back against these changes in Pennsylvania as well. We want the votes counted quickly, and I honestly think that we're going to get a lot more results than people think. I mean, in 22, we got 90% of the vote in Pennsylvania. Obviously, the last few percent did move left, but it didn't matter because Republicans lost both of those races by, a lot. People need to vote early if they can. Track their vote. Make sure people vote, period. Make a plan to vote as well. If you don't have a plan, you don't have a backup plan, then that's kind of the issue. Because people need to put some time aside and go out there and get it done. But Anthony Vaccaro for $100 says, what is with conservatives constantly dooming? The chat is pathetic with all of our supporters forecasting a loss while Dems go on CNN and say Trump has a chance of winning. Come on, let's focus on winning. We'll see. Dooming is dumb. I think that, I'm glad that your super chat was the $100 one because it got a lot of attention. It's a much needed super chat for people to see. I don't quite understand where it comes from because, the polls show Trump winning, but Trump's going to lose because people are upset that Democrats have made things closer or something. Like, this is not how a movement is supposed to operate. At the little bit of pressure, you're still ahead. You're actually changing the momentum in reality, and people are sitting here and acting like the sky is collapsing in. Yeah, it's not really quite how it works. We're seeing what's going on, but if it really is Harris by 2, Trump's at 48, Trump's going to win. You're getting the third place candidate dropping out, supposedly endorsing Donald Trump, and people are acting like the sky is falling, everything is done. So, yeah. Ash K2 says, a Reddit post suggests married women are secretly voting for Harris. This is disheartening to hear. Okay, who cares? What Reddit? See, this guy, every single time, ever since Harris got the nomination, comes in and sends these super chats that are just insanity with the levels of dooming. You're browsing Reddit. If you browse Reddit, you probably think that Trump's going to lose every single state. I can't exactly, sit back here and act like Reddit's some conservative stronghold when they even were 80-90% liberal before they banned all of the conservative or even center right-leaning subreddits. But in terms of married women aren't going to vote for Harris. It's impossible. You could debate the margin, but they're not secret. Nobody's secretly vote. What are they keeping it from their husbands? You're claiming that the husbands are abusive because their wives are keeping the vote. Like, that doesn't make sense. Of course, more women are Democrat than men. Most of these relationships that are, interpolitical, the men tend to be Republican because women are not going to be attracted to these, liberal men out there in most cases. So, no, I don't think it's real. I don't know what you're reading. Oh, I'm voting for Harris, but I'm keeping it a secret. Some woman writes on Reddit, okay, that woman definitely didn't vote for Donald Trump 4 years before, most likely, so who cares? Who cares what Reddit says? Reddit is not the average person in Wisconsin that's on the fence. DePueb says, what do I say to doomers? Who says the Dems will just rig it with no COVID? Is there anything we can do to ensure election Integrity, well, just tell them if it was barely enough last time and now they've spent all this money on lawyers and on defortifying certain states, then, why exactly are they going to be upset, or why exactly should they doom? I'm not worried too much about it because we should be able to beat it. They milked that cow as much as they could in certain places. And it wasn't just the urban cores, mainly the suburbs, mainly the exurbs. They had, they really planned that out in a lot of these places. They had a comprehensive plan. You have a lot of people who run a lot of these nursing homes that have kind of weaponized them as vote harvesting operations, and there's no way to catch them, but everybody knows it. If you look at the precinct data, it's pretty evident. A lot of it, they take advantage of these people. They get their ballots, they put them there. That's why they get pissed off when Republicans say we want to clean out the voter rolls of these inactive voters, because they'll say, well, that's actually, I don't know, some form of racial insensitivity, or it doesn't even make any sense. But no, we want to make sure it doesn't happen. And if it's apparently not happening or whatever, then it shouldn't be a problem. Should it be a problem? It shouldn't be a problem. Florida does it. Ohio does it. You saw what happened in 2020 in those states. So again, I don't know to what percent in what state, Donald Trump was screwed over in 2020. Definitely, I think that there were a couple states that were within 1% that definitively should have been investigated, were improperly investigated, and you have a lot of takes that are bad takes about election shenanigans from the right that kind of discredit the actual arguments that people have that are 100% valid, because they just get lumped in with these other people that think machines are changing votes from Venezuela, and that Trump really won California in a fair count, because both of those things are just obviously not true. Johnny Freedom says thoughts on Trump letting an immigrant speak Spanish at his rally in Pennsylvania. What happened to we speak English in this country? Well, he did speak English. He spoke English, that he spoke a little Spanish, and then he went back to English. So again, it's kind of questionable, but I don't think that people are exactly, really worth getting bent out of shape over it about some, Venezuelan, some guy who escaped socialism or communism from his country that was caused due to price controls, speaking at a rally about price controls. If anything, you could add, it's more, adding authenticity to the thing. There's not a lot of Hispanics in Pennsylvania. There's a surprisingly large amount of them in the Lehigh Valley, to be fair, and it's not talked about a lot. But I don't know. It's not that big of a deal. It's not like he only spoke Spanish or whatever, or it's not like our politicians are these people like they do on the left. They get on the debate stage and then they start talking to each other in Spanish or answer questions in Spanish in an attempt to pander, which failed miserably in 2020 on the Democrat side. So it is what it is. I'd rather people speak English, but this one guy gave a speech and he did a little bit of it in Spanish. Is it really the end of the world? I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but I can't bring myself to care. Let's see. Let's see. Fiji Boy says Lichtman has officially said Kamala's to win tonight. Okay. Well, either way, this guy there's a very good chance he's going to be proven wrong. And here's the problem. It doesn't matter if she wins. If she wins, it's probably going to be by like 1,000 votes in Pennsylvania. There's no way you can accurately predict such a thing with that model. So maybe the model's right, maybe the model's wrong. We're about to find out. But the model was proven wrong when he said that Biden was going to win, because they pulled Biden for Harris because they knew Biden couldn't win. So even if Harris technically wins and the model is right, which again is technically wrong if you actually interpret it properly, it's all hype. It is all hype. That's all it is. And we'll see. Hopefully he's proven wrong. That's probably one of the reasons why I want Trump to win, just so he gets proven wrong again, because it's happened before. Domenico Dietria says, how can Kamala Harris receive the necessary delegates when there was no primary in each state? It doesn't add up. Trump did it the right way because Biden released all his delegates that he controlled to her. So Security TV says they literally sacrificed the blood of the innocent to commemorate the DNC. This is not the Democrat Party. It's the political wing of the woke cult. Well, that is the Democrat Party. That's what they've become. It's not the Democrats from even 10 years ago. It's the Democrats today. These people are deranged. They're lunatics. We got to make sure we defeat them. Sam Madsen says, who's worse, Florida Democrats or Michigan Republicans? Florida Democrats, just because of their downfall. The thing that is that Trump is going to come roughly even in Michigan. Maybe he does fall short by a point or two. That's fine. Well, it's not ideal, but it's not as bad as losing a state that was the swing state and then Trump goes out there and wins it by 10 plus. The Democrats have completely fumbled the bag in Florida. Republicans in Michigan have not really had their best run the past few years, but it is recoverable, whereas the Democrats in Florida are just in complete shambles, and they're really not going to be able to dig themselves out of that hole just because of how the state is transformed recently, whereas Michigan is still winnable if Republicans have a strong candidate. They may even flip the Senate race there, which is an open seat. I think a lot of that's because of Trump, but it's also just a testament to the fact that if you have the right turnout operation in place, that you can get Republicans elected in the state of Michigan. Jimmy Payne for 20 says, what are your thoughts on Kamala's tax policy and price controls to bankrupt and evict Americans from their homes and starve them? Hopefully people are going overboard about this. Well, the tax policy is awful. She wants to raise corporate taxes, which, again, does not just affect Walmart. It's probably not going to affect Walmart. It's not going to affect Amazon. It's not going to affect the big corporations that have paid little to nothing in tax, even when the tax rate for corporations was 35. It's a tax rate that applies to medium businesses, small businesses, etc., that make above a certain amount. That's who's going to be affected by this tax rate. And a lot of those other smaller businesses, they don't find their ways around these loopholes the way that a lot of these other people do. And she definitely is somebody that just doesn't understand the economy. Price controls lead to shortages. Price controls lead to worse inflation. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. Doesn't work that way. Burger Barons is currently in week 2 of canvassing 200 plus doors a day for Trump and in and around Milwaukee, Wisconsin, encouraging voters to vote absentee or vote early. Yeah. Well, that's definitely good. We need a lot of people. And if there's like a Wisconsin website, I haven't found one, a system like the Michigan one, the 10X votes, the 10 Friends, or the Pennsylvania Chase. I haven't found one for Wisconsin or North Carolina, Georgia, Nevada, Arizona. If people know about state-specific ones like that, make sure to DM them to me somehow, and I'll take a look at them, because we need to do what we can to promote this among the people that can get involved, that live in those states. Which, let me ask this question to people. Do you live in a Big 7 swing state? So this is Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, and then we have Arizona, and then Nevada. So we'll see what people say about this, but we'll see how many people we have. How many people do we have that live in one of those? Because the election's going to be decided there. Harris isn't flipping Florida. Harris isn't flipping Texas. Trump is probably, if he even comes close to flipping a state like Virginia or Minnesota, it doesn't matter. Hopefully we do. I doubt it. I mean, we will win the election by then anyways, but the chances of it now versus before, probably less. But who knows, if things go south for the Harris campaign, it is more than possible. It is more than possible. But we have about, almost 30%. So again, how many people is that live in one of those states? You have, if you apply that to the entire audience here, we have that's still tens of thousands of people that can get involved, that can put in the work somehow. Even if you don't live in one of those 7, you can phone bank. You could do a lot of stuff from California, from Texas. Just from your phone, you could do a lot of stuff. Put in an hour a day of phone banking on the Turning Point Action app and get voters out to vote who otherwise wouldn't be voting. I mean, that is absolutely huge. It definitely helps out a lot. So Colin Shaw Indie Game says, thoughts on Scott Pressler? He's doing a lot he's got his own organization now, which is smart, because he's been one guy. Now he's got an organization that is huge. So I hope that they can continue to work. And we've seen Bucks County, it's getting redder and redder. Bucks is getting redder. Luzerne's about to flip in the registration data. There's a lot of stuff going on that's good in a lot of those places. And Bucks especially, because Bucks is a county that's swing. We can't explain it like a Luzerne where it's all these ancestral Dem switching registrations. Bucks is a little bit different. It's closer. Republican registrations are looking up in Bucks, and they're looking up in Philadelphia city proper even. The registrations in the other collar counties of the past couple of weeks, Democrats, very, very marginal gains that are getting outweighed by even the gains in Bucks. So that's good news, even if they are starting to finally turn the tide in a couple counties, which could just be from, the primaries when they registered as Republicans. I'm not particularly concerned about the Trump margins in the Philadelphia area just because I can't see Harris doing any more than like 2 points better in some of those collar counties, and I think she's going to do worse in Philadelphia City. I think she's going to do much worse in northeastern Pennsylvania. The Lehigh Valley, I think she does a couple points worse. It just depends on the turnout. Are we getting the rural turnout, or is it going to be another 2022 situation? I think it's a lot less likely to be one of those with Donald Trump on the ballot and putting all those resources into the state of Pennsylvania this cycle, which he has. So Ryan for 20 says, aren't internal campaign polls far more accurate, and the reason why they are so confidential? Also, O'Reilly's a doomer with no access to internal campaign polling, but Axelrod does, and caution Dems. Well, their super PAC is saying it, that she's still, the race is not much different than it was with Biden. And they're warning people against it, which is smart because it's not. There's very few people that were, or saying they would vote for Donald Trump that are now saying, I'm voting for Kamala Harris. Very few people. Now, you might get some of those RFK Jr. people that were parking their vote that were not comfortable to say Biden because they were embarrassed about that debate performance. So, yeah, let's see. We have more super chats here. Sam Madsen said, if I remember right, your poll says there are a number of silent Harris voters. Who are these people? Well, the poll asked a question. Are you comfortable sharing your vote choice? And the silent Harris vote proportion, it's just not really a silent Harris vote, but it's that they would say that they're less likely expressing support for who they're voting for than Trump voters. It wasn't by a ridiculous margin. But I did find that interesting because you didn't see that back in 2016. I think it's more of a testament to Trump supporters being more, I guess you would say, it's socially acceptable, but doesn't necessarily mean that pollsters are underestimating Kamala Harris, because I never really bought the theory of the silent Trump voter as much as some people did. I mean, it existed to a certain extent, but a lot of those polls that do that, they're mainly, polls that only used by telephone, and those polls tend to be less likely to be accurate. People lie to pollsters on both sides. Republicans do lie more to pollsters if they're talking on the phone. But in terms of these silent Harris voters, I don't even know if they're silent Harris voters, but the silent Trump voter, it was more just the polls missing certain Trump voters than there being silent Trump voters, because you still had some states where the educational demography was different, like Georgia, where more of the educated population is Republican, and the polls would actually underestimate Hillary Clinton by a tad in Georgia, not by much, but you kind of see the dynamic shift based on which state's being polled for sure. And then in Texas, where the Hispanics, the working class Hispanics, started to become more likely to vote for Trump, even with some suburban shift to the left. Now the polls in Texas, they went from underestimating Democrats to now overestimating Democrats in 2020. 2022 was a little bit of a wash. So I think that might be part of what's going on there. And it's also why the polls in the Sun Belt tend to be different than the polls in the Rust Belt. Even when Biden was in the race, he was in Georgia, it was down by 7 at one point, but he was winning Wisconsin. It's like, how does that make sense? Elk 3 says, do you trust early voting? Will my vote be cast? Well, of course. Check your vote. You can check and you can track your vote. The problem is not them throwing votes in the garbage. The problem is them harvesting certain shady ballots. That's the main issue that these people have. Early voting, I think it's good. If you're worried about certain stuff, maybe you want to wait until October, mid to late October to early vote. But if you vote, they're not going to have to waste as much resources contacting you down the stretch. BCL Production says, if Harris loses in 24, how will that affect 28? I have no idea. It's like asking the question, if Trump loses in 2020, how would it impact 24? Again, these are questions. I don't know. I don't think that Harris is going to be running again. I think they'll discard her. I think they'll kick her to the curb. We'll see what happens. We will see what happens on that front. Mike Griffin says Trump needs to do another massive Twitter space. I hope he does. Luke Newman says, I think you're the best political channel on YouTube. Well, thank you. Secession Now says, who do you think is more detrimental to the USA, DEI, transgender, Zionists? Probably, I'd say DEI is definitely, well, look, the thing is that I can't bring myself to care that much about conflicts in the Middle East on that front. I can't bring myself to care too much one way or another to say it's anything's a threat. I think that the main issue is if you talk about the social fabric, it would probably tie more into the DEI stuff, the wokeness, which, I mean, it encapsulates the transgenderist element of it as well. So, Purple Potato says, Mr. Beast versus Nick Fuentes 2036, who are you voting for and who wins? I don't think that's ever going to be an election that's going to happen, ever. I don't think either of those people would ever be able to get a major party nomination. And I probably would have to look into the other candidates as well. So we'll see. But 2036, there's no shot. No shot. You're going to have people that are, I guess you would say, too on the fringes get nominations, or people that, like Mr. Beast might try to run, but I mean, the guy, what does he even bring to the table politically? He's not even a political person. Democrats, he probably lean more to the left. Democrats don't even like him because he does charity work, but then he also does this like wokeness stuff, defending his weird people that he associates with, and then Republicans, for good reason, don't like him. So, yeah, I don't think it's likely to happen. Based Cat says, you think Trump's sentencing gets delayed again? It wouldn't surprise me, but I wouldn't bet on it. Ash K2 says, Florida Democrats had a great night, defeated several DeSantis-backed school board candidates. Miami-Dade mayor avoids runoff. How are you calm? Well, how are you just like cherry picking nonsense? Because that's all you've done is cherry pick nonsense. Oh, this Redditor says this. Oh, this YouTuber says this. Oh, this CNN did this thing. It's like, this is not, you talk about how am I calm? So some candidate in Miami-Dade who was already the mayor in a technical nonpartisan race ended up winning and breaking 50 as the incumbent. It's like, okay, and look at the party data. Look at the party data in Miami-Dade. Republicans outvoted the Democrats in Miami-Dade. If you're talking about certain school board candidates, you also had the inverse happen as well. So cherry picking is not how you win. It's just unnecessary panic. William Alfano says, you believe the communist warship is starting to fade? I mean, this is kind of like their festival. It kind of was fading. Now they're trying to bring it back. So I don't know. Look, the Democrats are hyped. The Democrats are energized. They're enthusiastic. Doesn't mean that it's going to translate. They already are going to get close to full turnout in that front anyways, based off of how they use the election system. I'm not entirely worried that Kamala Harris is going to add a ridiculous amount of new voters. Might add a couple million compared to what Biden was going to get, but detracting from Trump, I can't see it. Trump probably gets in the 70s of millions. I think Kamala also gets in the 70s of millions as things stand right now. We're going to probably wait on some turnout projections before we do a final popular vote total. And that includes shenanigans, by the way. I'm factoring that in. Mr. Jimmy says, thoughts on beta male Chris Nelson voting Kamala? I covered it already. Somebody asked me. I don't care. He belongs on that side. Florida's going to go red with or without him, and all the other DeSimp holdout lunatics that are LARPing for Kamala Harris because they're just deranged, because, I don't know, internet people hurt their feelings? Okay. Eric from Wisconsin says, seller says, list my home for $300,000. Realtor says, Harris is giving buyers $25,000 towards a home purchase. Seller says, really, let's list it for $325,000. Yeah, it's the sound good doesn't work element of the, average fifth grader economic proposal. That's what they're doing. And maybe that will work on some people because it sounds good. But the fact that even the liberal media is even pushing back kind of tells you that I don't even think it can go that far. She's just not a very smart person. That's why she doesn't talk to the media. J.D. Vance will talk to hostile media 3 times in one day. Kamala Harris won't even sit down for a puff piece. John Campbell says, does Harris actually have a real chance at winning North Carolina, or are they bullcrap polls? Doomers are clowns and lack confidence. Well, I'm not worried about North Carolina, but I think that Trump needs to still shore it up. I think it's good that he's campaigning there because of what we're seeing in terms of the early voting starting so early. He's got a campaign there now. Is he going to have to spend too much time there compared to other states down the stretch? You'd hope not. And we have results. 56% of the vote is in. Mary Peltola at 50%. But again, what is this? Where are these votes? Are they early votes or are they election day votes? That could determine quite a bit. But I don't know. Will Peltola be able to win at the end of the day? It's a real question. Right now, she's got 51%. Democrats combined for 52% of the vote. Very split Republican field once again. Nick Bajich thinks that he's doing something by running and probably causing the field to have some issues. But I don't know. If this is mail-in, if this is all mail-in, then it should be interesting. But if not, Peltola might be strong compared to what people think. But we'll see. Let's see. Riley Moore says, I'm a 28-year-old voting for Trump for the 3rd time from Pennsylvania. Well, we'd love to see that. Presidential Mike says, Trump will have a lot of silent black voters. Not what our poll shows, because our poll had so many black respondents. It was 23% black in our poll, which, the electorate at most is going to be 13%. Even Obama, in the glory days of his campaigns, 13%. And that was when the Hispanic population share was lower. So if anything, hitting 13% would be huge by today's standards. But I don't think Kamala, she might get 12. But in terms of the black vote as a whole, you look into the poll, Trump already is getting 17%. He's getting 30% of black men that we poll, even with the more liberal slant. So do I think he's going to get numbers like that? Probably not. But do I think he's going to gain? Yeah, it just depends on turnout, because they polled unregistered black voters, and they are far more likely to support Trump than black voters that actually vote, particularly black men. So is there enough? We'll have to see. You got to micro-target voters, because if you start blanket registering a demographic that overwhelmingly votes blue, you're not going to get that return on investment that you like. But in terms of the Democrats, they stopped registering voters because, well, they know that a lot of the people that aren't registered, period, in terms of these blanket registrations, whether they're Hispanic, whether they're white, working class, or whatever, they're not as Democrat as they used to be, and they realize it backfires, so they stopped doing it. So we got to get on top of it where it'll help us, like in Pennsylvania. Top Gear Fan 2848 says, Trump Force 47 captain in Pennsylvania here. Hope Trump can flip Virginia. We'll see. I'm not confident on Virginia, but I think that if the Roanoke poll ends up being true, which it could be, I could see it be Harris +3. There's just too many undecideds for me to say this is a great poll for Trump. It's a good poll, but a great poll. Fox poll with him and Biden at 48 tied was huge. So I don't know. I don't think it's worth investing just yet. Maybe down the line, but not right now. DB Cooper 44 for 10 has been subscribed since the start. Great job, man. 3 times Trumper from Ohio. How do you see the debates going? I think if Trump lets her talk, she'll eliminate herself like Biden. Also, military loves Trump. Exactly. They've tried to get the all these hoaxes about the military, all the comments they try to take out of context. It doesn't work. Doesn't work like that. And then they put up somebody who's literally stolen valor and they think he's going to help with veterans on the VP slot. No, he's not going to. In fact, Virginia was the only state where, it's got a lot of veterans in Virginia, and the Walls numbers were horrible in Virginia. It was minus 17. Now, granted, advances were just as low, but that's kind of a disparity from what we've seen in past polling, where Walls was in the more positive range. But yeah, they've projected the first 3 in Alaska, no surprise. Where are these results from in Alaska? It doesn't quite tell us any information. But in terms of the debate, because that was the first part of the super chat, I think that Trump probably just needs to keep doing what he's doing. He's preparing, apparently, with Tulsi Gabbard, which, again, that's the individual that took out the first Kamala Harris campaign back in 2019, didn't even make it to 2020. I think it's smart. We'll see what happens from that. But it's definitely a good debate partner to have in terms of the prep. Also, Elk3 says, I'm a registered Dem voting for Trump, many more like me. Well, there's a lot. Party registration and party ID are not the same thing. I mean, I don't know if you identify as a Democrat. Maybe you do. From the looks of it, you might be an independent who's registered as a Democrat, and that's another thing. But, yeah. But we'll end the poll. So we still have, about a quarter of you guys live in a swing state, a major swing state. That is crucial. And in terms of the total electoral vote count of all of them, if we could add this up, it would be what looks to be just 93 electoral votes, which is less than a quarter of the electoral votes in the country. But it's crucial. Someone said, should I vote if I'm in Texas? Yes, you should vote. I don't care what state you're in, Massachusetts or Hawaii, Texas. I think Texas is going to be close to safe red, but you need to vote. Okay, we can't take anything for granted, especially now. Yeah, Texas is probably going to turn a bit of a corner this cycle, but you can't say, well, I can't vote or I'll vote third party because Trump's going to win my state. We want to win the popular vote. We don't want to have any excuses. We can't be too complacent. We got to get out and vote. Get out and vote. This is what they fear, people actually doing something. They fear people actually, getting people to the polls, getting ballots where they need to go. We have so many ground game initiatives now that we did not have before. It doesn't get talked about a lot, but it's true. Many of them are people just volunteering. Many of them are not even, costing the RNC a ridiculous amount of money. They're just there. And that's definitely what the system is. They're not too happy. The Democrats are not too happy about that being the case. And they can brush it off. They have their operation. We can't underestimate it. But if we just do our part, what ground game really was there in 2020? Were you contacted by the Trump campaign in 20? Well, if you donated, you probably were. But I was probably contacted by the Democrats more than I was contacted by Trump, aside from like the just general donation text. Now I get bombarded by Republicans, but I feel like that might have to do with continued support or something like that. But still, we need to find people. Democrats are good at finding people. You could say, well, shenanigans and all those existed. They will exist to some degree. I don't know to what degree. But we know what we have to deal with. We know what we have to work with. We know what we're up against. So let's keep on going. So, but you have Florida. Great news out of Florida, Wyoming. Obviously, it's not like there's really any competitive races in either of those states. Alaska, this is the one. Will Peltola be able to lose? I don't know. We'll see. This is the open primary. This is the first vote dump. Is she going to go up? Is she going to go down? It's possible she does get above 50%. If that's true, she might be like one of those regional, like Susan Collins type of people in the state. But who knows? She's more liberal than people think, but you know, she's definitely got some sort of, there will be some ticket splitting there. I predicted that she would win in the House prediction. I think Trump's going to take Alaska by more than 10, for the record. I think he's going to win it by a decent amount, but maybe not as much now. I don't know. I think he'll still take it by 10. Ash K2 says, stay vigilant. Peltola could win Alaska's 2026 Senate. I'll agree with that one. It's possible. I think it's less likely, but it is possible. It's entirely possible. Depends on the state of the national environment. Depends on if she wants to give up that seat that she probably has a better shot at holding for a Senate seat that she has less of a shot. If she's going up against the Republican who's there now, probably going to be difficult to see her win. But there is an outside shot, which I think is why it's important that she gets defeated in November, which I don't think the primary is going to be fully indicative of the electorate then, because you're going to have a full electorate. But the Senate race in 26 is Sullivan running, intent unknown. He is currently 59 years old. I think he probably runs again. I think he probably could beat Peltola. It'd be closer than usual, but I think he'd beat Peltola. So Peltola, though, on the other hand, if she ran for re-election in 26, she'd probably, if Trump is in the White House, she probably ends up winning that seat. So I don't know. More super chats here. We have Joshua Paradis for 2. Keep it up. Appreciate your hard work. Well, thank you. Eric from Wisconsin says, Tony Evers at a Joe Biden moment while awarding the Democrats to Harris Walls. Absolute embarrassment to my home state. Yeah, Scott Walker, he was legendary. He was epic. I don't know what happened, but 2018, third term, a little bit less popular, doesn't survive the wave, rare loss for an incumbent governor. But yeah, Matthew Foxtrot says, I'm visiting my parents in Wake County, and they're both Trump voters, but they've been contacted by the Dems 3 times and Republicans 1 time. That could be because of where they are. We know Wake County is a very, very Democrat stronghold, but I don't know. Wake County, yeah, how much, Democrats, United Democrats, 170,000. Not a ridiculous split, but yeah, Wake County is very, very liberal. It's not that surprising. But Christian News Junkie says, do you think Almanac of American Politics is a reliable source and relatively unbiased? I don't know what that is, so I can't say. I don't know. Seems to be some breakdown of demographic information. This book seems interesting. It seems if it's just data-based, it probably is unbiased if it's just based on the data, kind of like U.S. Elections Atlas. The main editors were working with the Washington Examiner, so, you know, probably not super liberal. I'd say it's probably unbiased. I don't know much about it, but it's interesting. But yeah, all right. We'll probably wrap things up. It's been a good show. I don't know if I'll be live tomorrow. Maybe not. We'll see. Either way, we will be live on Thursday after Harris gives her speech. But the DNC 2 days already, is it moving the needle? Well, apparently it's moving the needle away from the Democrats. Either that or it's not stopping any bleeding. According to Polymarket, it's Trump by 5. When before Harris was up by 4 a couple days ago. Some of that might be RFK Jr. Possibly floating, dropping out. We'll see if it happens. But anyways, guys, we will be wrapping things up here. Make sure you like the stream down below. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit that bell for notifications so you never miss another video or stream. And I will see you guys in the next one. Red Eagle out.